This is the Party Political Playlist.
So welcome, Alasdair Murray.
Hi there, good to be here.
I suppose we should start off just basically, if you want to maybe just, for anyone who isn't aware of who you are, just a little introduction to who you are.
I'm the Liberal Democrat candidate for the constituency which the university in, which is Bournemouth West, Alderney and Branksome East. It's the first time I've stood as a candidate, and it's a very interesting and enjoyable experience. It's become a very exciting election over the last couple of weeks, and what's particularly great is people were engaged in a way that, because of everything that's gone on in Parliament with expenses, with misbehaviour, etc., that we thought perhaps people weren't going to be. A few weeks ago, a couple of months ago, when we first started campaigning hard, when the snow was still on the ground, you got pretty short shrift on the doorsteps, but people are now talking, thinking, a lot of undecided out there, and the great thing is we also know a lot of young people have registered in the last couple of weeks. In fact, Bournemouth West had about 2,500 new registrations in the last week, and we think most of those are students and other young people.
Okay, so for anyone who doesn't know anything about you personally, do you live in Bournemouth, or you're from the area?
I grew up in Southampton. I have had family living in Bournemouth for a long time. At the moment I split my time between a family based in Southbourne, but I still work, as my wife does, with jobs that we just can't commute to from Bournemouth at the moment, so we also have to be elsewhere some of the time, although I'm full-time in the last few weeks of this campaign. If I win, I've said I will move with my family right into the heart of the constituency, kids at local schools, and my wife is going to give her job up, and I'm going to pay for that, I assure you, afterwards.
So what made you decide to come into politics then?
I mean, I've always had an interest in politics. I mean, it goes back a long way. I'm old enough, I'm afraid, to just about remember the 1979 election when Mrs Thatcher came in. I mean, I was small, but we had a little class election, and I participated in that and sort of got the bug. But sort of in my sort of early working career, I was a journalist, and I've also worked for think tanks. And so I had the sort of luxury of being terribly critical about politicians. You know, they've no idea, they don't do this right, they don't do that right. And I just thought, a couple of years ago, I thought, have the courage of my own convictions. If you don't think they're doing a very good job, you might as well stand up and put your head above the parapet and see if you can do better.
We talked in the break about the new registered voters in the area, and the thought that they are young people. What do you think has inspired young people to become involved in politics or interested in politics? Because I mean there was quite a few issues in 2005 about not many people, not a great turnout and stuff like that. I mean, how do you think politics is becoming more relevant to the young people? What do you think?
Well, I don't think it's the case that young people aren't involved or interested. It's just they haven't been particularly into party politics, the kind of politics we get in the election. But if you look at all the campaign organisations, from Greenpeace to anti-hunting to everything else, that young people are incredibly involved and incredibly active on very political subjects. What I think's happened though in the last few weeks is I think the debates have made a real difference, because it was the first time that people could really see all three leaders going at it completely unholds bars, see everything that they were about, whereas normally in an election you get it only sort of through the news. You get a 30-second snippet of what they might have said, and you don't really know whether that's actually what they think. And there's no doubt, and I would say this, I'm a Lib Dem, that Nick Clegg's performance in the first one really caused people to sit up and take notice, and it appealed to an awful lot of young people. So I think there is a connection there. I'm not saying that everybody who's registered is registered because of Nick Clegg, but I think it's helped, and I think it's given people a feeling again that perhaps there is something in politics, and perhaps we can make a difference rather than feel completely removed from it.
I suppose focusing on kind of the young people, there's going to be quite a majority, I'd imagine, of the younger vote. One of the issues that kept coming up when we were asking people for suggestions and stuff was tuition fees for uni and education. And what do you think? What are your thoughts on tuition fees? Should they remain? Should they go?
Well, the party has been committed, as many people know, to abolishing tuition fees for some years now. We've had to modify that position slightly, not in the goal remains, but in the time it's going to take, simply because of the state of public finances, and everybody's going to have to make sacrifices, and unfortunately some of it is going to go through the fee systems. But what we've said is we will immediately, if we're in government, abolish the final year's fee. So if anybody who's in university now who's not yet in their final year will benefit from that, and then over 6 years we will gradually phase out the rest of the fees, so that after 6 years nobody will have to pay any fees at all.
Interesting. Okay, should we go to another tune?
Sure.
Any preference? I mean, do we decide on another
If we
song?
go for, I think the next one on the list is the Smiths. Please, 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 let me get what I want. This, I'd imagine there's an obvious reason behind this choice. So we're talking a little bit about the televisual debates and kind of the energy, I suppose, for politics they seem to have sort of created and kind of got lots of people back interested in politics again. There's a lot of talk, well, kind of within these debates has been on the idea of what would happen if there was to be a hung parliament. What are your views on hung parliament?
Well, I mean, a hung parliament is a different kind of politics. It's not necessarily worse, for sure. And, you know, if you look abroad, there are good examples in Europe where permanent hung parliaments, countries like Germany, are arguably much better run than certain countries that don't, like Greece, which is like us, a first past the post system and in a terrible mess. But it is different, and that creates its own challenges and problems. What we don't know at the moment is just what the breakdown of the party is going to be, and also what the share of the vote is, because the two things are not necessarily going to be related. And if you look at the polls as they are, with the Lib Dems just about second, ahead of Labour, but Labour could still end up with not just considerably more seats than Lib Dems, they could actually still end up with more seats than the Tories, even though the Tories would be on current polling the most popular party in the country, which means forming a government is going to be mighty, mighty difficult.
Yeah, there's a lot of decisions there and negotiations, I imagine, to work out how the balance would work. But with specific sort of reference to Bournemouth itself, I know Harvey Taylor has sent out a letter proposing a kind of, I suppose almost not a mini hung parliament, but like a suggestion on working together. Is that something you'd be interested in taking part in, or?
Yeah, I mean, Harvey has put this out, and I entirely sympathise with Harvey in terms of there should be much more consultation between different groups, and that should include political groups on an ongoing basis. And I think there are areas, and we've seen it. We've done as candidates quite a number of hustings across the town over the past few weeks, and there are areas, care for the elderly, for instance, where we all agree that actually these have to be cross-party solutions, because you're talking about things that are done not just for the next 5 years, but for the next 50 years. So, you and I as well are going to be affected by these decisions going forward. And I'd be more than happy to sit down and discuss this with Harvey. The only problem he have is we are in the middle of an election battle and we have no time at the moment. And it's just, it's not going to be a quick process, because there is some disagreement about some of the issues that should be on the table. But as I've said to Harvey recently, I'd be happy to sit and chat as soon as we can.
Okay. Looking back at the playlist, another song you've chosen is Bizarre Love Triangle. Is there any specific reason behind this choice?
I like New Order. I think this is one of their best tunes, and it's a good kind of mid to late 80s sort of beginning to get that sort of dance that came in then. Feeling reminds me a bit of my sort of late teens as well.
Thank you, then. This is New Order then, playing on Nerve Radio. Now, I'm sure you're a massive fan of our regular show, Alasdair.
Absolutely.
But just in case you weren't aware of it, we have a regular feature we like to do. It's Liam's little project, really, and it's called Pop or Poetry. The idea is that Liam will quote to me either some dialogue or some lyrics, and I have to decide whether it was a pop song or whether it was some poetry. So we've decided for these special shows to adapt the feature slightly. So we're going to play politician or pop star. Okay, so Liam's got some different quotes. Okay, so it's just a little test to see whether you can guess if it's a song or if it's a political sort of speech.
All right, okay, these are not difficult at all. I got a stuffing from everyone else. So okay, so first one. I'm supposed to be the soldier who never blows his composure. Even though I hold the whole weight of the world on my shoulders, I'm never supposed to show it.
Well, it does sound like it could be Michael Popotillo after he lost, but I think it's actually a song.
Correct, yeah, that's Eminem. Like Toy Soldiers. Okay, 1-0. Okay, let's find another one. The truth is, our patience should have been exhausted weeks and months and years ago. Even now, when if the world united and gave him an ultimatum, comply or face forcible disarmament.
I'm not sure it makes any sense at all, which means it absolutely has to be a politician.
Yes, Tony Blair. Okay, 2-0.
Has it got any verbs in it? Because if it has, it's almost certainly not Tony Blair.
Today, maybe it's an Alistair Campbell's special.
Dear Mr. President, come take a walk with me